Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. The division championship Minnesota Twins are looking to go all the way to the World Series in 2024. Bolstered by inspirational shortstop Carlos Correa, a healthy Brian Buxton, and rookie phenom Royce Lewis, plus a pitching staff led by Pablo Lopez and an outstanding bullpen featuring Johan Duran, the Twins are the best bargain in the major leagues, and Target Field is the best venue in baseball. Sheridan Dulas & Kins, PA, a family and criminal defense law firm, has been serving clients in Dakota County and throughout Minnesota for over 40 years. Ranked a Tier 1 Best Law Firm by U.S. News and World Report every year since 2009, Sheridan Dulas & Kins are here to help you in your most difficult life circumstances. Established in 2007, 45th Parallel Spirits was among the first 50 micro-distilleries in the United States. Based in New Richmond, Wisconsin, all aspects of production occur at our facility. If you're interested in visiting and learning more about the 45th Parallel Distillery, please check our website and plan a visit to tour our facility and taste our spirits. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org.
Welcome to Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Steve Francisco. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to welcome back to Access to Democracy a frequent visitor to our studio, Minnesota State Senator Jim Carlson. Senator, welcome back to Access to Democracy.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Jim, just to remind our viewers, tell them just briefly, what are the geographical boundaries of your Senate district?
Oh, let's see. We have a couple of precincts in Burnsville, and probably the predominant one is Precinct 1, which is on the north side of Highway 13 as you come up from Diffley. And then there's another one that includes the area around the school, and I think the border there goes all the way over to County Road 11. So it's a chunk of Burnsville that includes a couple of precincts. But then most of Egan, with the exception of that ragged edge, and it does no longer includes the area around Lebanon Hills Park. So it's Cliff Road is the dividing line, and then after you get to Pilot Knob, it kind of wiggles and goes down to the Apple Valley border. And then in Mendota Heights, it's everything but a little chunk in the northeast corner of Mendota Heights.
So pretty much part of Burnsville, most of Egan, and a little bit of Mendota, or most of Mendota Heights too.
Yeah, and the city of Mendota entirely.
Yes, and it is Senate District 52 for those folks who are tracking numbers of Senate districts. And in case viewers don't know, each state Senate district has two House districts, a 52A and a 52B in this case, right?
That's correct. And the way these are divided up is that they take the census of Minnesota and divide it by 67, and that's the number of people that's in each district. So the Senate districts may be much larger to get the people into it, but they are 67 districts of within a couple of percent the same population.
So we are just about, a little over a week past a very big election. We see Donald Trump returning to the White House in 2025. He won the electoral vote, although his popular vote margin has been shrinking recently as they have counted some outstanding votes. I believe they're from California and places out west. So that margin is down a little bit, but there's no question he won the Electoral College vote, and that's how we elect presidents.
He won the Electoral College, and he won the popular vote as well. This is, it's not, not rare, but it does happen where the electoral vote will be won, but the popular vote will be less.
Right.
And that's what happened in future President Trump's last election,
Right.
is that he did not win the popular vote.
Yes. So coming off that election, most of your colleagues and yourself, the state Senate was not on the ballot this
right.
time. That you will be up for re-election, and all of your colleagues in the Minnesota State Senate are up in 2026. But there was one important race, and that was in Senate District 45, which is the Minnetonka area.
Correct.
It was represented by your colleague, Senator Kelly Morrison, who resigned her seat in June to run for the U.S. Congress, and she won that election. She'll be replacing Dean Phillips. So this has given us a result that's very interesting, that the DFL will continue to hold control of the Minnesota Senate.
That's right.
By all of one vote.
That's correct, yes. And
say a little bit about what the implications of this one vote majority are for the coming session, as you see it.
Well, interestingly, the Senate is by one vote, but the House right now is even up.
Tied.
It's 67 of each party. And, you know, I often refer to myself as the person that people go to for little known and little sought after facts and information. And there's a lot of fun or funny election things that are related to this. One of them is that Kelly Morrison had to resign at a certain date so that the replacement for her could be in the November election. Had she waited a little bit longer, then it would have had to have been a special election after the November election.
5th, yeah.
Yeah, and so those are things that, you know, they're buried in law, but they are things that you have to follow. And then the governor has 45 days to do a replacement election. So now 45 days it's difficult to jam that in between a November election and when we normally
does that mean that he has to set a date for a special
Yes.
election, or they actually have to have had the election within the 45 days?
had the election. There's a period where the governor has to decide to have that election, and then they can pick that date anytime in the 45 days.
And so that didn't come into play in the case of Congresswoman-elect Kelly Morrison now, because she had resigned, and so her replacement was chosen on November 5th.
Yeah, she could be on the ballot, and then immediately when she resigned, then Ann Johnson Stewart, as well as another person, ran for a primary, so that primary could be finished, and then the election could be held in the November election.
So I want to ask you further about something you just noted, which is that the other body, as you call it, the Minnesota House of Representatives, split evenly, 67-67. And my understanding is that's the first time this has happened since 1979.
Correct.
When they had some sort of power sharing arrangement that was worked out between the DFL and the Republicans.
That's right.
You're not going to have to do that in the House because you'll have that majority. But again, how does this affect the dynamics, the relationship between the Senate and the House?
To be determined. And what they have to do is they have to come up with an agreement. And that agreement is how they share the power, because neither of them will be the exclusive Speaker of the House. There can only be one.
You can't have two speakers. You can only have one. Yeah.
But they can share the duties by days. They can share the duties by, let's agree that we have these committees managed by the Republicans and these committees managed by the Democrats.
With the even split, will there be equal ratios in the committees in the House, would you expect? They're going to have to be equally divided?
To be determined.
To be determined.
Yes, and that's where they would probably have, for instance, maybe have Health and Human Services in Republican control, and then they can appoint their representatives, or their representatives in that committee, and they might go 2 extra representatives on their side. And then the Democrats would do the same. And generally you do that. There is a rule, it's not a law, it's a rule that says that you should be appointing members of committees to reflect the number of people on the floor. And so we didn't do that in the last 2 years because you don't have to do it. It's a rule, and people break rules all the time. So in every committee, we had 2 extra Democrats. And so that will probably continue for this coming 2 years. When the Republicans were in control, they actually appointed more of their side than Democrats, and they had times when they couldn't get everybody to all the committees because they had so many people appointed to each committee. But generally, you do that so that because we have to present bills to other committees,
right.
And when you present the bills, you're not in your home committee. So to make sure that you can still pass a bill in your home committee, you have an extra person.
I was just going to say, given the split, an even split in the House and a 1-seat majority for your party in the Senate, this is going to be extremely important that members show up, that people not be sick when key votes are occurring, either in committee or on the floor. Wouldn't that be correct?
That's right.
There's no room for error here if you're trying to move a piece of legislation and get it passed.
Yeah. One Mason law that's in favor of the people that are worried about that is that any motion that is voted on, if it's a tie vote, it's a failure. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Because it's not a majority.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. So when does the 2025 session convene?
January 14th. And it was an agreement, and I'm not sure what all the implications were in that agreement, but generally, because this is a budget year that's coming up.
Right.
And the leadership tries to balance the number of days they're going to be in session. And according to the Constitution, if the House is in session, that's a day of session, even if the Senate is not. If the Senate's in session, that's a day of session. So, and you have 120 days that get divided between the 2 years of a session.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to manipulate the stop and start dates, but you always have to finish on that second Tuesday the second Tuesday in May.
In May.
So you don't have a choice there. That at midnight, you're automatically adjourned.
Unless you go into special session, which has happened in the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the governor has to call that special session. And by the rules or by the law, the governor calls that special session, and the legislature adjourns it. Mm-hmm. And what is kind of funny about that is that, these are the little sought after things again. For instance, if the House adjourns and there's a bill that still has to be passed, it's dead because the House will adjourn and they can't vote on it, they can't reconsider it, anything. And that's been done several times where one body will adjourn to make sure that nothing gets passed in the other body.
Interesting. I want to ask you about something you just referenced, that 2025 is a very important year because it's a budget year.
Yes.
Tell our viewers a little bit about that we don't do an annual budget for state government, right? We do a biennial budget once every 2 years.
We do a biennial budget that will begin on that July 1st. And
the beginning of the fiscal year.
That's going to last for 2 years. Now, we do a budget in the even number year if there's a deficit, because you can't continue and have a deficit. So, and that's called a supplemental budget. And that's, and we do those very often. And you can do it at any time, actually, but generally you do it in that odd year, or the even year, numbered year. And you adjust for things like, let's say what happened in 2022. Republicans were in charge. We had the tax bills were all set, collections were running pretty strong. Towards the end of the session in 2022, we found out there's going to be a great big surplus. Mm-hmm. But the Republicans adjourned without adjusting the tax rates. They adjourned without spending that great big surplus that was going to happen in 2023. So in 2023, we were still using the old laws that were in place, the old collections, and the budget boomed to this $18 billion surplus.
With such a close margin in the Senate and in the House, evenly split, do you anticipate it's going to be much more difficult for Republicans and Democrats to come together on a final budget?
Well,
Because it would seem, my intuition would be initial negotiations may start out favorably, as we've seen in the past, and then as you get closer to the end of a session, the differences between the parties in terms of budget are going to become much more pronounced. Do you think that will play out that way this time, or?
well, I'm a 51% optimist. And I'm thinking, hoping, and planning that it's going to be easier to get along with people because nobody will get anything passed if we're all being belligerent. So I think that we'll have, and the public has wanted us to work together better as well. So to please the public, to get anything done, and also, this is kind of the pre-preparation for the 2026 election. We don't want to add more acrimony.
Yeah. And we should make a point, in 2026, the governor, all the constitutional officers are up. The Minnesota Senate is up, and again, all of the House is up because they serve 2-year terms.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And so there'll be things in it. Let's say people want to change redistricting. This would be a good year to put in new rules for redistricting. There are some things that we don't really follow well.
But that doesn't happen until
It doesn't happen until the
2030,
yeah,
right?
2030.
The next census.
Yeah. So and by that time, a lot of times there's too many new rules. There might be new federal rules. There might be new considerations that the state would like to get into law. So we might look at it now. We might look at, for instance, judge confirmations, judge appointments that might be looked at because the Republicans want to do it and the Democrats would like to do it as well.
Interesting.
So little things like that.
So it would really be a misunderstanding for people to think that, well, it's going to be deadlock or things aren't going to get done. In fact, you're suggesting, Jim, if I understand you correctly, is just the opposite could prove to be the case. We don't know yet, obviously, but there's incentive for both sides to try to work together and get some things done.
Yeah. And, the public is going to be paying a lot more attention now since the last election, the brutal election, all the accusations.
Right.
We think the public is going to pay much closer attention to that balance.
It's going to be very interesting, I think, to see how this works out because we've heard much talk the past 2 years. We've had what's called the trifecta, meaning that the DFL, your party, has been in control of the governorship, control of the House, control of the Senate. Obviously, with the House being evenly split now, that ends the trifecta. Governor Walz is in there for at least 2 more years, the Senate with a 1-seat majority.
Yeah, we've been laughingly referred to our Senate majority as that everybody is now the majority leader because they can just step away or vote with the opposite side, and the whole a bill goes down.
Do you anticipate there are certain issues where that's a possibility?
I don't well, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, I have one idea where it might happen, but otherwise it's not. Generally we have caucus always before the session. We plan our votes, and the majority leader will count the votes. I mean, that's we always talk about Nancy Pelosi never bringing anything to the floor until she's sure that it will pass. Well, that's what a good majority leader does, and so we have done that. There has been a couple of times when we've had people who just cannot vote for something, and so that gets pushed off. It maybe gets rewritten so that we can agree to it. It may, maybe we can get a Republican to cross over, and I think that was a bigger problem in this last session than it will be in the next.
So, Jim, tell our viewers, in case they may have forgotten, which committees do you serve on? And is there any change in the 2025 session for your committee assignments?
I can't talk about everything. There is
Because
some
there could be
changes.
some movement, but it's still being
Yes.
worked out.
People should look at the papers on Tuesday morning. Because, we do have a new senator that's being sworn in on Monday. She'll be sworn in on Monday at 2 o'clock, so if people want to come up and see what that's all like, they can come up to the Capitol. Former Senator Ann Johnson Stewart will become Senator Ann Johnson
She
Stewart
was
again.
Kelly Morrison's predecessor
Yes.
from Minnetonka.
2 p.m.
Yeah.
And then there's a little reception afterwards. So if somebody wants to come there and rub shoulders with the new senator, the new majority, you can come up and do that. And this is a bipartisan thing. So,
Yeah.
the Republicans are going to be in the audience as
Yeah,
well.
so what I'm hearing is there could be some committee assignment changes coming. We can't really describe what they are right now. We'll stay tuned and
That's
see
right.
what those are.
And
what
we have been having a lot of conversations about it. And I've kind of been involved in some of those. So
because you have been the chair of the Senate Elections Committee, a very
Correct.
important committee that has drawn a lot of scrutiny as we've heard a lot of discussion and frankly a lot of misinformation about election integrity. And so you've had that. You've also been on the
I'm on transportation, on public safety, which we generally call the Judiciary Committee,
Right.
and also the transportation. Did I
Right.
say transportation?
transportation,
Yeah.
which is real important in our
state,
community.
state government finance.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, state
And isn't
government-
one of your committees have jurisdiction over veterans issues too? Didn't I
Yes,
see
state
that?
government finance and veterans.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and now there's some changes there, and I'm not sure what they are because I've gotten emails about how the House is arranging their committees, and some people are very upset that there isn't a separate Veterans Committee. And now we took care of that in the Senate, took partial care, let's say. We instituted a separate budget for the Veterans Committee. I mean, it's state gov and veterans, and we have a separate budget which has a separate target for spending in veterans.
Would that perhaps be some of the veteran service organizations, American Legion, VFW, that are concerned about having a separate veterans
Where
committee?
they get grants. Now, I mean, those organizations are more the advocates.
Okay.
So it's not that they get money from the state.
No, they don't,
Yeah.
but they serve,
Yeah.
they
But
represent veterans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's who their membership is.
And so, but things that, like I worked heavily on this Veterans Court, which is something that is
Sort of modeled after the drug court.
correct. Yes.
Basically a diversion for people who may have their first encounter with law enforcement
And
issues.
it might have some influence on, like in drug court, it might have that you have a solvable drug problem.
Right.
When you go to Veterans Court, if it's connected with your service, for instance, PTSD
Yeah.
or something else, and even drug,
Yeah.
the inability to handle different kinds of drugs,
Yeah.
you can go to Veterans Court, and depending on what the charge is, let's say it's burglary,
Yeah.
if it's connected to your service, the judge will do a state adjudication,
Right.
meaning that they will give you a list of things that you have to comply
Right.
with. For
It
instance,
doesn't necessarily excuse anyone, either in drug court or the Veterans Court, as I understand it, from citing you for a violation of law, but it gives the judge some discretion in
Yes.
terms of sentencing,
Sentencing,
correct? And
yeah.
recognizing
Yeah.
that there may be more explanations for why somebody
That's
did
right.
something. And more importantly, trying to connect them, like the drug court does, to resources to help them
Yep.
with rehabilitation.
It can be domestic violence.
Yeah.
It can be all sorts of things, and the veteran must take the courses or take let's say the repairing
Yeah.
information and do something with it, and then they come back to court, and the judge, if the veteran has kept their nose clean, has followed the
Complied with
instructions of
the
the
terms,
judge,
right.
the judge will suspend that indictment. And one of the reasons why I got involved in it was we have a lot of homeless veterans, and one of the reasons that they're homeless is they have a conviction,
Yeah.
and then they can't get you can't get an apartment, they can't get credit, they can't all sorts of things. So now, if you go to Veterans Court and your conviction is vacated, your you can get a clean record again, or almost clean record.
Let me ask you, Jim, we're down to about 4 minutes. I want to ask you, there's always this issue when one session ends and another begins. There's always leftovers, if you will, from the previous session. Things that you wanted to get done that for one reason or another didn't make it to the finish line, didn't get to the governor's desk. What are your top priorities for the 2025 session in the Minnesota Senate?
Well, my top priority policy-wise is I want to try to get ranked choice voting accepted in Minnesota. And ranked choice voting, the way we have it proposed is that a municipality, that's a school district, a city, a county, can do it with a majority vote by their board. Now, it has to be by their board, or if the board wants to send it out to the voters.
Give people a very concise description. What is ranked choice voting?
Ranked choice voting is you get maybe a second or a third choice. If there's lots of people that are running for the same office, you would have a favorite. But there's another person that might have a policy that you like. And so you can vote for that person that has the policy that you like. And that was what happened, what we would have had happened had we had legalization of cannabis. But instead, we had spoilers that came in and made their case for being a cannabis legalization promoter, and that took votes away from the primary party. We've had other spoilers that have been put in by the parties to take votes away from the principal person. Angie Craig was accused of doing that in the CD2 race, which she didn't have anything to do with. In the CD2 race, the last two before that, there was accusations of the Republicans doing that against Angie. Right. If we had ranked choice voting, that would go away completely, because there's that second choice, and if I like that person better than that person, I can vote for both of them. I can vote for the person that I like their policies, and I can vote for the person that I like their party. And then,
so it actually gives, you could suggest that it gives voters actually more choice.
Actually,
rather
yes.
than limiting them to
exactly,
one choice.
Another way to think of it is the former title we used to use for ranked choice. We used instant primary. And so you go there and you can act like it's a primary. You vote for the person that you want in that office, and then you vote for another person. One of the things I like about it is it's a statement to the major parties that, hey, don't forget cannabis. Don't forget children's issues. Don't forget these things. So you can vote for people that have those policies that you like.
Yeah.
But I want to say one more thing before we take off here, and that is a construction bill. We generally have called that a bonding bill.
Right.
We did not get one passed last year. And that's a terrible situation because we have we have 700 requests for capital expansion. So what we need to do is we need to address that as fast as possible, get that passed as fast as possible, because we're in the construction season. If we delay and fool around until June, we're well into the construction season.
Well, and when the state does that, it's borrowing money, and you want to take advantage of it when interest rates are favorable rather than unfavorable, because it reduces the cost to the state to borrow the money, right?
But you also have to remember that bill, the amount of that bill, goes directly back to the state. So it's an economy increaser, it's a tax increaser, it's sales tax, it's income tax, it's jobs, all good things that come from that.
Senator Jim Carlson, Senate District 52, Eagan, Burnsville, Mendota Heights. Thank you again for joining us on Access to Democracy, and good luck in the upcoming session.
Oh, thank you, Steve.